Hello, and welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host for the evening, the Gritty Broman. Today's podcast is a gear podcast, specifically the gear that Brian has been using throughout this elk season. Some of the gear changes kind of from the beginning of the month towards the end of the month. One thing I want to tell you guys about before we get into the podcast, Brian didn't have on hand the actual handgun that he mentions or the holster that he was using. He was using my wife's Safariland. It's a Safariland holster. It's hard plastic. The gun goes in there, and you have to hit. There's a little lever that you can hit with your middle finger, and then you can pull it out. Go check them out. They're pretty cheap, but I dig them. You can put them on your bino harness, down the back of your pants, on your side. They kind of clip wherever, and they kind of act like an extra layer of safety, I suppose, because once it's in the holster, unless you can pull it out, you can't fire it. So it's kind of cool. Want to let you guys know that we're going to be doing more giveaways. We just gave away a set of Santiam binoculars, and we got another pair that we're going to be giving away, and maybe another spotting scope. So go sign up for the newsletter, and also go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to be doing some giveaways through there here, starting near the end of this month. If you guys are trying to get some mountain ops, use code GRITTY. You'll get some free shipping on your order. Also, if you guys want to get a pair of those sweet trekking poles that Brian's been using in the last couple videos, the Sissy Sticks, you can get 15% off by using code GRITTY at checkout. So on to the podcast. This podcast is kind of a repeat of some of the other ones that we've done. If you guys want to know more about the food specifically that Brian was using, check out the description below. I'm going to link it to a podcast that we did a couple weeks ago that is all about the food that Brian uses. All right, on to the show.
All right, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call. If you're listening to this podcast, you might want to go check it out on YouTube. You might want to go look at the video. It's going to be a little bit visual at the first. First, I'm going to talk about the gear that I used on my September archery elk hunt, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on the actual hunt itself, kind of what worked and what didn't work, and kind of how it went down. So it's just a podcast about the archery elk hunt from this season. And for those that are listening in the office here, I have my bull elk, and I don't know what he scores, but he seems like a beast to me. So I'm pretty stoked. For those who don't know, I was able to get a bull toward the last few days of the season. Archery bull. I did a over-the-counter elk hunt, elk tag on public land in Idaho, which was the goal this year. I really wanted to do it solo. And pretty much, and I did it solo, and I wanted to kill a big bull. You know, that was the goal. There were many younger bulls I passed up on in satellites, and believe me, toward the end of the season, I was like, am I really making the right choice here? But man, I really have wanted to do a public land, do it yourself, over the counter, kind of solo type hunt, and kill a mature bull. So archery elk seems to be my Achilles heel. Like I'm not that consistent with archery elk hunting. I'm all right, but I would much rather be I guess I get nervous, man, with elk in a way I don't with a lot of other animals. And there's just something about an elk screaming and your rib cage and your head rattling because they're bugling. It's just intense, and they're just such big animals, and you're right in their presence. And I got very close and had some very close calls. Had a bull a little bigger than this one that I almost took, and it's just cool, man. It's just an amazing experience. So anyway, here he is. For those that are watching, he's a mature bull. He's pretty heavy. He's not long-tined, but, I like mass, and he's all broken. You can see he's all chipped on all these antler tips, and this brow tine on the front is just snapped completely off. He's a fighter. He's a brawler, and you can just see I love the character of these white-tipped polished horns, and you can see how much rubbing they've done, and on these brow tines, you see how smooth he's making all the rough knobs and stuff of the antlers. And he was quite the wallowing bull. He wallowed a lot. He was in the mud a lot We were on him a couple of times. And so anyway, there he is. Pretty proud of this bull. I've shot some bigger ones, but this one just it's just how it went down. That's just cool. So let me get into the gear that I took on the hunt, and I won't spend too much time on it. We've done a few gear discussions, so I'm just going to kind of power through this real quick and give you a high level of what I used. I mean, I did my bear hunt with Lampers and Lusk, kind of the same gear. Did a tar hunt with Ryan Lampers in New Zealand. Again, another backcountry hunt. A lot of the same gear. Just changing things up a little bit because of the season, the conditions being a little different, and then of course the animal being hunted. If I'm hunting tar, I was using a little more optics than I was hunting. I wasn't really bringing in much for optics going elk hunting in the thick place I was in. So backpack, I brought the Stone Glacier. This is a Sky Talus, I think 6900. I have now put it through some major use. And I also ran the Seek Outside backpack in Kodiak the second week of September. I had a chance to hunt elk for about 5 days with Ben, the first 5 days of September, 5-6 days. And then after that, I went to Kodiak Island, hunted mountain goat for a week with Cole Kramer and Casey Harbertson. Cousin Will, had a great time there. I tested the Seek Outside pack, came back, and then when I went on this elk hunt, I went back to the Stone Glacier. I've run all the Kifaru different packs and frames. The one pack I haven't tried that I'm curious to try and keen on, just because Ryan Lampers really likes it. Ryan's puts his stuff through the paces. He's been using the XO, and he likes that pack too. But we both talked last night about this stone, and the one thing about the stone that we both agree on is that this Stone Glacier just sticks to your back. Like it just, you get it on and you buckle it up, and with 125-pound loads, you're off, and this thing just sticks. It doesn't slide down my butt. It doesn't slide off my hips. I don't have to continually adjust the straps. A 125-pound load is not comfortable. It sucks. Thankfully, almost all my pack out was downhill. Maybe a half mile was uphill, and then it was like 2.5 miles downhill. Not a bad setup. It was pretty, but the pack just feels really comfortable under a heavy load. And that's really what matters to me more than anything. If you don't kill, or you're not packing out heavy meat loads, then I think you can run lots of different packs. But again, after having worn a ton of different packs, I just keep going back to this Stone Glacier just because of the way the hip belt fits, the way the shoulder straps, the way it carries a load. It doesn't shift. It's solid. I can lash a lot to it. There's things I don't like about it. Like in some ways, I got a little bit of some holes kind of working their way in here, and the bag material doesn't seem as tough as some of the other material I've had on like my Kifaru. But man, that said, it still hasn't. I mean, I have drug it through the war and back, and it's just still going strong. So haven't been able to break anything. That's that. I grabbed this Seek Outside water bottle pouch, which I really like. And this pouch is from Seek, and I like it better than the Stone Glacier option. I have one from Stone Glacier, and I don't like how it sits. This one from Seek is perfect. It's kind of large. You can fit lots of different stuff in it, and it goes onto the hip belt. The one Stone Glacier provides kind of goes up under your shoulder strap, and your arm is kind of it kind of lays between your arm, sloshes a bit, kind of makes a little more noise. I just like it mounted to my actual hip belt. So I like this Seek Outside water bottle pouch I got from those guys. I just buckled it onto my Stone Glacier belt. Again, I'm running the GSI water bottle. It keeps things hot, keeps things cold. It's insulated. It's the microlight. It only weighs a little bit more. I've talked about it before. Only weighs a little bit more than like an Nalgene. Yet it's metal. I'm not drinking out of plastic. I can dump hot or cold liquids into it. When I'm in below freezing temperatures, my liquid will not freeze inside the bottle. So I just like it. I filled it with hot ignite and even slumber at night, and it just keeps your liquids hot as you sip on it and enjoy it. I could take hot liquids with me in the mornings on my elk hunt, just crack it open, get a little sip, and it's just nice having hot liquids when it's cold outside. Let's see what else I got in here. I took a 9mm pistol with me on this trip that I got from my brother and his wife Daisy. It's really his wife's gun. I talked to Anthony about if I should bring a handgun or not, and it's of much debate among people whether that's something you should do or not. But I'm glad I did. I think it was very easy to bring. I have a 10mm Kimber, actually Camp Guard 10mm, but it's a lot heavier of a gun. It's bulky. I really dreaded the idea of bringing it. Where I was hunting in Idaho, not a grizzly area, but there are black bear and there are dogs, just wild dog, or like I shouldn't say wild. There are people's dogs running around. The Peruvians are out there pushing sheep around the countryside, and they have cattle dogs and Great Pyrenees. And those suckers would maraud around the place, and sometimes they bark at 2 o'clock in the morning. One night there was like 5 or 6 dogs barking 100 yards from my tent, and I'm alone. And I'm a little more worried about a stray pack of domestic dogs than I am wolves, or a cougar. Like, domestic animals can be very dangerous. And we talked to a few people who actually have had to shoot some of those Great Pyrenees because they were extremely threatening. So yeah, I think it's just nice to have the gun. Now, when it comes to black bears, most of the time I think they're gonna leave you alone. And I could bring bear spray. I think that's always good. But I do like having the gun as well. And when I talked to Anthony, we debated, and he said, you know what, a 9mm, it does a great job scaring a bear away. Just the noise of it. But if I needed to, it's probably enough to stop the typical bear in the area where I'm at. Not giant, massive black bears, So I did bring the gun, and it was nice to have it. And bears have personalities like people. Like they're as diverse as human beings are. All it takes is the wrong bear on the wrong day with the wrong attitude, and you could have a problem on your hands. And then finally, I talked about Anthony again. He's a police officer. He's a state trooper. He's been a detective. And I remember years ago I asked him, "Hey, why do you have this handgun with you?" We were in Ketchikan, Alaska, actually, and we were getting ready to cruise up to Prince of Wales. And Anthony said, "Brian, I'm not so worried about the 4-legged predators. It's the 2-legged predators that worry me the most." And I think that's just it. You never know what kind of human being you're going to run into in the wilderness either, anywhere, in fact. So just having a handgun there, I liked it. And it was, it carried really nice, and I put it on my belt loop on my backpack, slipped right on. And then whenever I ditched my pack, I was able to take the gun off of that and slip it right on my bino harness or on my belt on my hip. And I hunted the whole time with it and didn't even notice I had it, but it was nice to have it there nonetheless, just in case something bizarre happens. That's just me. And then, let's see, my stockisons. These are by Lone Peak Leather Co. They're made by our buddy Tanner. And these stockisons he custom built for my feet. You can get them at Lone Peak Leather Co. If you go on Instagram, I think you look it up, you'll find it. We offered a coupon code for a while where you get a discount if you got a pair. But these things they just help you be like a silent ninja in the woods. And in fact, I use these to close the distance and sneak up on elk the entire week that I was there, that last week. And they're just so much sneakier and quieter than a pair of boots are. I like walking around in slippers all day. If I don't have a pack on and I'm not carrying a load, which is how I hunted the last 4 or 5 days, I love it. So we'll get into that a little bit later when I talk about the actual hunt. Here's my black diamond headlamp. I think this is the Storm or Storm Front or something. I've had this one like 5 or 6 years now, but I love this Black Diamond. Any of the Black Diamond Storm higher cost headlamps. It's got a red light, a green light, conserves batteries well. It's a great headlamp. And then Stone Glacier Chilkoot sleeping bag, 15 degree. This sleeping bag is the world's greatest sleeping bag, according to Ryan Lampers. Brought that. It doesn't weigh much at all. You can look it up. It's 850 fill down. It's really, really nice down. It gets very compact and keeps you very warm. I've been running this Thermarest Neolite Air forever. Same pad. Never had it pop. Never had an issue with it. The thing is like from 2000. I think I bought it in 2008. So, and I have used it a lot. Next, I have the Minimo Jetboil Minimo stove. This is for my own personal meals that I cook. My wife did all my meals. We did a podcast earlier, which there's linked to the notes in the YouTube video. We'll have Brent mention it in the intro to the podcast as well. You should have heard it there. But the Minimo is a great stove for simmering foods. And when you're rehydrating your own homemade dehydrated meals, which are so much easier than people realize, like my favorite go-to lately has been quinoa and chicken, and then I sprinkle Parmesan and some cheese on top and get a nice crust, and I'm eating like chicken and rice almost, and it rehydrates really well. I've also been eating a lot of noodles and ramen with Suzanne's homemade bouillon and stuff like that, and it's just easy to rehydrate. And then I do the mountain mush mixture, which is a little different. Suzanne surprises me with chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, and pecans and almonds and stuff mixed with oatmeal and whey protein and PB Fit peanut butter powder and different things. And just a mixture of it's so good when you're out there in the backcountry. So those things rehydrate on that Jetboil Minimo like a champ. And it's just really much easier to eat dehydrated food that way, even freeze-dried food. So like when I take like some Heather's Choice or something as well, I don't eat Mountain House anymore. That stuff's devilish. But for those who do, I mean, sometimes you got to wait 20 or 30 minutes or something for that stuff to just rehydrate. You dump the hot water in the bag, you seal it, and you wait. When you're in the Minimo, you just dump it right in the Minimo, get your water going, you just let it simmer and bubble for 3 or 4 minutes, and it's just so hot and stays so hot, it just rehydrates quick. And then you're eating it.
Does the can last you?
Oh, yeah. So Brent just asked, how long does this canister last you? Literally, it's unreal. When I'm using that and I'm not bringing it to a full boil, for example, in here it says when it's 100% full, you have 24 boils in it. Well, I don't even go to a boil. When I cook oatmeal in the morning, I cook a meal, and then I have at least 2 hot drinks. So if I boil 4 times a day, probably, or get food simmering or temperatures up to where it's simmering a little bit 4 times a day for 7 days. So that's 4, 7, 28, 30 boils in a 7-day window. And I still have like more. This easily lasts a week for everything you need. Easily. And those big ones, I've been running the big one, then I don't know how many I've done with it. So it uses very little fuel to do the job as well. So I bring one of those little things for like 2 people for a week, and it's done great. Good question. So then what else I got? This smells like goat, dude. It still smells like Qatar. It just won't go away, which is cool. I actually like the smell of tar. It's sort of a
smell of goat sex.
Yeah, a little bit. Like it's got a. Someone's gonna clip that and post it. Wind checker. I like this ambush stuff. It seems to like last forever. So it's like the same one I've been using like for 4 weeks straight. I got my calls in this little coin purse. I really liked the Maverick, Dirk Durham's Maverick amp. Elk call by Phelps. This is the first year I've used it. I played around with it. I really liked the.
Brad left a comment saying you're welcome for the Maverick, and I
couldn't
figure out what he was asking.
Yeah, intern Brad gave it to me, and then I got another one later. This call is really versatile. I felt like I could kind of do a little bit of everything with it. Now, my go-to for like sounding like a big bull is the Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls bugling bull, the brown one. It's just what I can grunt with and scream with and really go to town on and do lip balls and all that I can do with this. And then for just subtle cow calls, I really like the gray amp frame by Phelps. That one's great. And then I like the orange Elk 101 call, which that one, if I just want to make like really soft and sweet, gentle cow calls, like, I'm over here, yeah. Then that Elk 101 call is the best. So it's funny, you play with them and you use them enough and you kind of figure out what works.
So
but
the call is to bring in the boys.
The Corey's call is just for just real subtle and soft calls. And then the gray amp is similar. But to really sound like a raging bull, I like the Raging Bull by Rocky Mountain. And then just for all around, I could do cow calls and bugles and all that at the same time. I can't sound like a huge bull with the Maverick. At least I can't get all growly and stuff. It's a little too soft, and that's just for me. I don't know why, but if I play with that more, I could figure out how to use it for everything. It's a great call. That's a great read. The gray amp is also another. I mean, this Maverick and the gray amp, both of these Phelps calls are really good, like all around versatile, does everything kind of calls. Where this one, I can't really cow call with it or very well at all. It's just to like sound. This Rocky Bugle is just to sound just like a giant bull. Sea to Summit spoon, long spoon. Everyone needs this. People are. This spoon is so legit, it's just unreal. Ben wants it. Everybody that sees me, it's a long spoon, so it's so good for cooking, eating, everything. Why does your wife not like the spoon?
Because it's made with aluminum.
That's weird.
She has a thing about certain metals that they're not good for you.
Again, the Phelps like Easy Estrus. I don't use this very often, but when I do, it works. You know, it's very loud and you can use it to almost locate bugle. It can get an elk going when it seems like other stuff doesn't work. So, for the bow, I got the Hoyt RX1. I'm using the Knock to It by John Dudley, and it's just the thumb button release. I've got the Valkyrie arrows. We talked about that before, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the actual hunt. And quickly, I have my Possibles pouch. I like these Kifaru pullouts. They're some of my favorite pullouts that are made on the market. And then inside, I've got like my waterproof matches, extra headlamp, all my medical supplies. I got a compass, Taito knife. I got some zip ties, just a little bit of everything. I got Imodium AD for diarrhea, as well as some Benadryl for allergic reactions, although I don't have any, but just in case someone else does, or maybe I develop one for the first time. So Possibles pouch is kind of the everything emergency pouch. And then over here I have some camera stuff, like my camera strap and blower, batteries, things like that, which we've discussed before. And then my tent, I brought the Seek Outside shelter. It's a Seek Outside Cimarron, and this thing is unreal. It's like 1.5 pounds. Got a little carbon fiber tent pole in the middle here, pops right up. You'll see some video from that. And stakes, I mean, it's awesome. It's like 9.5 by 8.5 feet at the base. You can stand up inside the tent. The stove was the other thing that I brought. The first 6 days, I didn't bring a stove. And then the last 5 days, I brought the stove back. I went in, I packed out and packed the stove back in. This is the stove. This is about 1.5 pounds, maybe 2 pounds. And the stove just has it's just titanium. You've got your stove pipe in here, and you've got
the same stove from part 5 of the tar hunt, right?
Yes.
Exact same one.
Exact stove from part 5 of the tar hunt. Just bolts together. It's got a little door. I mean, people who haven't used a stove inside of a teepee like this, you're talking 3 pounds, 3.5 pounds for your whole shelter with a stove. And to be able to chuck some wood in there and grab some little flimsy branches, a little bit of grass or tinder, some backside of some bark, some paper like stuff, wall that up, and you just you throw a match on there, and when you have the duct open, the flue open on the stovepipe, and you have the door cracked open, it creates a wind draft. That stuff lights in seconds. It's just because it's like you're blowing on it constantly, and it just and boom, you got fire. You're throwing wood on it, and then that thing turns red hot, and your tent is 90 degrees in minutes. And then you can tamp it down, play with the flue, shut down the oxygen flow by closing the front door on it and the vents, and you can really play with the heat, hotter, colder, slow down the burn, just work off the coals. It's incredible, and it's a game changer, because when you're out there, there's 2 things I think that make people want to quit and go home really bad. One is food. They're tired of power bars and Cliff bars and garbage food and Mountain House, and they're just craving something of nutrition. They just need something of better quality. So that's why I say go listen to our podcasts that we've done on food, because how we dehydrate, what meals we took, what snacks we took, because it really, at no point do I feel the need to leave, because I have delicious food with me and healthy food. So, and then heat's the other thing. The people get rained on, they get wet, they get cold, and it makes you want to go back to the truck, to someplace warm. Well, when you have a stove and your whole setup's 3 pounds, and you can get the fire cranking in there, there's no need to go home. You got a castle right there. And with the size, my cousin Ben came with his son Logan, and for 2 days out of my 10-day solo hunt. They came out in the middle, and there's some photos of the 3 of us in there and some video. We slept 3 guys inside the teepee, and it accommodated 3 very easily, and you could fit 4 in there, no problem. But it would be tough to fit gear, and it'd be uncomfortable because you're crammed in there. But 2 people, in a stove, it fits your gear, your stove, and 2 people, and you're spacious. 3 people you can do, it's a little more crowded. 4, you're not going to be able to fit a stove in there easily. But I'm telling you, that shelter's large and comfortable, but not so large that you have a hard time setting it up. I found a little ledge on a slope to set up my tent for this camp, and you need 8.5 by 9.5 feet. With my Kafaru sawtooth, I need 14.5 feet by 8 feet. And when you're dealing with that extra 5 feet of length, man, it becomes a real nightmare to try to set that up. And yet, usable space-wise, I feel as though my Cimarron gives me almost the same feeling of spaciousness and comfort, but without the need for the footprint and without the need for the weight, because the Cimarron is made out of Dyneema Cuban fiber. Mine is. And so it weighs 1.5 pounds. I think my sawtooth is 3.5 pounds. So you're talking about a major, to kind of do the sawtooth stove situation, you're around 6 pounds versus 3 pounds with the Seek version. So I love the sawtooth design, and I love how it holds up in heavy winds. But I've put the Seek through heavy winds as well, even though it's more of a teepee style. And so far, guying it out, it's been able to withstand some heavy winds. So I just am in love with that shelter. So that's my shelter. I really attribute a lot of my success in staying in the backcountry and being comfortable and healthy. I didn't lose any weight. I attribute that to my food preparation, the food choices and selections, my backcountry stove that simmers and warms up that food and keeps me comfortable, and then my shelter and my wood stove, my Chilkoot sleeping bag, and my pad. Like that setup, it's really, really solid. Makes me totally comfortable in the backcountry. And then I love this ground tarp. I have this Seek Outside ground tarp. It's the envy of everyone in camp. You can actually stake it down. Like a lot of times you throw out some Tyvek and it moves around or it wads up. This is real nice because I actually can stake the corners down, and it just, I've got a nice tarp on the ground. You know, every single person, because I ran into some people in the woods back there that were like, where are you at? And one of the guys, I'm like, you want to see my shelter? Come on over. I'll show you where my camp is. And I showed him where my camp was, Dave Davis from Draper, Utah. And we hung out for a while, and he was super cool. But people ask, like, what do you do when it rains? What do you do when it rains and you don't have a floor? And it's like, it is not an issue. It really isn't. The rain just goes off. It doesn't come under your shelter. And we were in some 4-hour, 5-hour downpours. Water didn't come underneath the tent. And if it does, you have a tarp down anyway. So the water goes under the tarp and you're dry. And so it's really not the boogeyman that people think it is. It's really not an issue. And water doesn't really come under the tent. Now, if you set it up in a bad spot, you set it up in a mud puddle or a depression, it can be crappy because water is going to pool right there. You set it up in a rain runoff or in a mud puddle, a water collection spot, you're going to have a problem. But you can look visually and look at the ground, and it's not rocket science. Like, well, there's a little bit of a hump here. It looks like water circumvents this spot. I don't see like a depression in the ground where there's been a mud puddle. You just logic. You just look at it and you're like, oh, this is a good campsite, and it's fine. It's not an issue, people. You got to try a floorless shelter. It's the only way to go unless you're like K2 in it above like timberline. So when you got to, take a dump, it's nice to have some baby wipes that keep you pretty scent free. So I also like to take some Aquaphor to keep things lubed up just in case you don't want butt rot or any kind of blisters or chafing or whatever. So some kind of chafing cream that works for you. I use Aquaphor. And when I get all sweaty and I'm hiking a lot, some people don't have the issue. I do. I got robust glutes and hams that are very smashed together and tight, and they can cause some chafing. And then clothing wise, it's different every time, and as the temperatures shift. But I wore the Apex pant early because I like how quiet they are. The Sitka Apex pant. Later, I switched and went to the Traverse pant, and I actually like that Traverse pant. It's new for me. I haven't tried it before. Sitka Traverse pant. They felt great. They're kind of just the right weight for what I was doing. And then I brought the first part of the season. I brought the Crispy Colorados because they're non-insulated. But they're really stiff, and my feet got pretty sore and tired wearing those. They were great in areas where it's straight up and down. On some of these rocky goat hunts I've been on, they're awesome. But I prefer my Crispy Nevadas for any kind of cold temperature because they're insulated. And I just like leather. I like how leather feels. I like how it forms to my foot. I can play with the lacing to get it how I want it for that day. And they're just comfortable. So I wore the crispy Nevadas for the whole hunt almost. And I use the Smart Wool sock liner. They're black. I can't stress enough how important a sock liner is. It just keeps the moisture off my sweaty feet. And then I use Darn Tough socks for most of the hunt. And those socks just seem indestructible. And they're great. So I think they even have a lifetime warranty or something crazy like that. So, but the sock liner, I have a hard time finding those sock liners. But I did find that REI was carrying them, and they're just black and they're thin and they're almost all merino wool, and they're made by Smart Wool. I've tried lots of other synthetic sock liners. Don't last a day or two before they're salty and gross and don't work for me, and I start getting hot spots. If I go without a sock liner, I will have to tape up my feet a whole bunch. I'll have to put Luco tape on them. I'll have to like duct tape them even, be careful, and my feet still get hot spots. And man, it's night and day for me to have a sock liner and a Darn Tough sock. Check that out. And then I brought gaiters for just to wear when the ground was soaking wet. I use the Sitka Stormfront gaiter. I like Brian Lampers uses the OR Research, and I think that those are an excellent gaiter. And then I did bring my Stormfront rain gear, top and bottom, for later in the season when it was raining day after day after day. And then I brought in the early part of the season, I brought this Sitka rain gear flash jacket. And for those that are watching, it's really tiny. It's just this little pullover, zip-up pullover, and it weighs nothing. And it has protected me from getting soaking wet multiple times. And you just like throw it over, weighs nothing. It's a no-brainer to bring it. Early season, I don't really feel like I need rain pants. Gaiters and this are great. Later, when it starts getting really wet and you're walking through brush, belly button high, oh, you're going to get drenched in minutes. And it's not so bad when you got a stove, a wood stove in your seek outside shelter, because you got your clothesline, get it hot, everything dries quick. And when you're hunting, and you want to be stealth and quiet, rain gear ain't going to help you. So a lot of times you're ditching your rain gear on those clothing and you're just soaked. So that's where the stove is a game changer, to be able to run a stove in a teepee and dry your stuff out. It's just a game changer. So the other thing that I did is I really liked wearing the Apex hoodie or the Sitka midweight hoodie. And then I wore over the top of that a piece that Lampers really recommended, and I tried it, and that's the Kelvin Active hoodie. It's like a sleeveless shirt hoodie thing that you can hike around in, move a lot in, and it breathes really well but keeps you warm. It's like a half sleeve shirt. It's pretty cool. I wore that a lot, and then I always bring my Kelvin Light hoodie and my Kelvin Light vest. And I didn't really need the vest if I brought the Kelvin Active hoodie. Anyway, tags and license. What else I got in here? I brought. I like this Windstopper hat by Sitka. It's lightweight, compact. It's a beanie thing, and it dries out really well and really easily. I brought two 3-liter platypus. Ryan uses the Hydra Seek or something. Hydro Flask. They're great too. And then I brought the Steri Pin for everything. Still haven't got sick. I drink out of some cesspools. I'm still in great shape. Just like the Steri Pin, folks. And I got a little rain jacket that goes on this Stone Glacier pack, which keeps your pack dry when you're hiking, and that's money too. And then for bino harness, I brought this ADAC from Camel Fire. Got my Leupold rangefinder. I just slipped onto the side here, the pouch right there. I like this pouch better than the one that came with it. I'm just used to it. I've been using it for years. I like that. I got my 10x42 binos from Leopold Santiam right in here. And I like the way that this thing's set up. It's real quiet, opens with one hand. Everything about this I actually really liked. I think for super, super wet, like conditions where I'm hunting someplace like Alaska, it's just not quite waterproof enough to keep your binos solid. But and then my sissy sticks, I use these religiously. Like, I don't understand people who don't hunt with trekking poles. For me, it's night and day. I can have my bow in one hand, pole in the other. In fact, I did quite a few stalks uphill, and then I'll just stick it on my pack. I'll use my bow as a trekking pole when I'm doing a stalk. And I've got my booties on, and I'm like going over a little log, and I have to step over this brush. I'm like, I'll put my bow down on the ground, use it to balance, go on one leg, and I'll use my bow as a pole, basically. They just provide so much stability. So sissy sticks, they're lightweight, 7.5 ounces each. Yeah. Carbon fiber on the top, aluminum on the bottom. I have beat the crap out of these. They're tough. They keep on rocking. I like the click lock. They're just awesome. Everyone I know that's got a pair and has been using them has been really happy with them. So, great product. And you can get them with the code GRITTY and save 15%. So you should do that. And then I think that's it for the gear. I've talked about camera stuff before on an earlier podcast. Check that out. But yeah, I think that kind of covers overall the gear that I used on this hunt and what worked for me.